For this last topic, we're going to solve percent problems using the equations. So we're going to do like the whole process, okay? So remember, we already set this up in the previous video, but to solve for the amount, we multiply the base and the percent in decimal form. The percent has to be in decimal form. To solve for the base, we divide the amount by the percent. So let me tell you what that kind of is really looking like. We know that we have the amount equals the base times the percent, okay? So if we're looking for the base, we don't know what the base is. What we have to do is undo the multiplication of the base and the percent. So we divide, and we have to do it to both sides. Okay. So we end up P divided by P just equals 1. 1 times B is just B. So basically, the base is equal to the amount divided by the percent. So that's what ends up happening. So to solve for the base, we divide the amount by the percent. Just remember the percent has to be in decimal form. Okay. And then, let me give myself some room again. If we're solving for the percent, we divide the amount by the base. So remember, the amount equals the base times the percent. Okay. We want to get the percent alone, so we would have to undo the multiplication of B and P. So technically what we do is we divide both sides by B. B divided by B is 1. 1 times P is just P. So we get that P equals the amount divided by the base. You basically take the amount, you divide it by the base. But here's the deal. Remember, we have to deal with the percent in decimal form when we're doing these equations. So this is going to equal some decimal. You would then have to convert it to percent form. Okay, so just don't forget that. This is going to give you the percent as a decimal. You then convert it to percent form, okay? Now, remember, solving is the process of isolating the variable to determine its value. So we know the steps we need to take here, but we still have to be very mindful. Our goal is to get that variable by itself, okay? And I'll walk you through this nice and slow, okay? Now, a couple of things that are very, very, very much worth noting. Students get really bent out of shape if the percent is ever more than 100. You can for sure have more than 100% of something. You could have 300% of something. You could have 700% of something. You can have more than 100%. And there's a tip, there's like a trick, a hint that's going to let you know when this is going to happen. If the amount is greater than the base, okay? So if the amount is greater than the base, the percent is going to be greater than 100. Okay. If the base is greater than the amount, the percent is going to be less than 100. So if you ever get a percent that's greater than 100, don't freak out. It can absolutely happen. Okay. And it's always going to happen when the amount is bigger than the base. Okay. Let's go ahead and solve. So we have example 3 here. It says solve each percent problem using equations, and we're going to do 4 different examples, okay, or 4 different parts to this example. So these are really generic. We're not into that world of problem solving where we have like stories involved. These are just really, really basic statements. So it's going to be kind of a nice way to ease into this world of solving word problems, okay? So for part A, we have 42% of 50 is what number? Well, the percent is easy. It's 42%. And then we have 42% of 50. So that tells me that 50 is going to be my base because remember the word of means multiply. So this is saying we're going to take 42%, we're going to multiply it by 50, and that is some other number, which for us is the amount. So this is what number? That's the amount, and that's the piece that's missing. So we don't know our amount in this case. So remember, the percent equation is the amount times the, or equals the base times the percent, okay? So we're going to get A, because we don't know what the amount is, it's going to equal 50 times 42%. But remember, 42%, to write it in decimal form, we knock off the percent symbol and then we move our decimal to the left twice. So we would just get 0.42. Okay, so we get A equals 50 times 0.42. And then we can use the calculator to do the side work. Remember, you can use your calculators now, but you still have to show us your steps, okay? So that means the calculator is really only there to do the side work. You're still showing us all your other steps, okay? So we can definitely let the calculator do 50 times 0.42. So let's see here. We get 50 times 0.42, and we get 21. So A is 21. And that really is your final answer. It's that simple, okay? So another way I could write this, I could say 42% of 50 is 21. Now, you don't have to write this statement, but that's basically what this translates to once we solve for A, okay? Now, Part B says 15% of what number is 9? Well, the percent is always super easy. It's right there, okay? Now, the next piece that we have is actually the amount. We know that is generally means equals, especially in a really basic math statement like this. So it's basically saying 15% of what number equals 9. So that is my amount. And then we're going to take that 15% and we're going to multiply it by some unknown value, which is my base. Okay, so let's fill in our percent equation. Remember, A equals the base times the percent. So we get 9 equals the base times 15%. So 15%, just to get some practice in, don't forget, we knock off the percent symbol and we move our decimal to the left twice. So 15% is the same thing as 0.15. So we get 9 equals B times 0.15. Now, this is just a word of caution. When we're dealing with this section, A and B can be really misleading. A's can accidentally look like 9s and B's can accidentally look like 6. Not everybody has to have great penmanship, and that is absolutely fine. But if you're turning something into your instructor, be really, really careful and make sure your A's look like A's, your 9s look like 9s, your B's look like B's, and your 6s look like 6s, okay? So I'm going to make this really dramatically look like a lowercase b, okay? Now, here's the deal. We have to always undo what has happened to a variable. That's kind of the heart and soul of solving equations. So I need to find a way to isolate this b. The issue is b is being multiplied by 0.15. Well, I need to undo that multiplication. So to undo multiplication in math, we divide. So to undo the multiplication of b and 0.15, I divide, but if I do it on one side, I have to do it on the other side. Okay, so that's kind of just solving an equation. We're doing the steps right here. So 0.15 divided by itself is really just 1. 1 times b is just b. And then we have 9 divided by 0.15 that our calculator can do for us. And if we scroll up just a second, remember I gave you some hints for how to solve for each of these. And we have right here, if the base is what we're solving for, we divide the amount by the percent. And that is exactly what we have here. We have the amount divided by the percent, okay? So let's go over to the calculator and we're going to do 9 divided by 0.15. So remember, the calculator doesn't do all the work for you, it just does the side work. So 9 divided by 0.15 is equal to 60. There we go. So we would say B equals 60, and that ends up being our final answer, okay? Now, just so you can understand what this statement would look like once we fill in the blank, we could say 15% of 60 is 9. Okay, well, I'm not going to circle it because you don't actually have to write that. That's not the final answer. The final answer is just B equals 60. Okay, but that's how we could replace the missing value in those little statements we're given. All right, C and D, I gave you the hardest example twice. So C and D are both looking for the percent, and that is always the hardest because you have to have a firm understanding of what is your amount and what is your base, okay? So for example C, it says, what percent of 150 is 9? Okay, well, what is our unknown? And that is our percent. It couldn't be more clear that we're looking for the percent here, okay? But we always take the percent and we multiply it by the base. So we would say, well, what percent of 150? Remember, of means multiply. So that tells me that 150 is my base. And then we know that is can mean equals. So I'm going to get some result of 9. So 9 is my base. So I'm applying my percent to my base. What percent of 150 is 9? So remember, apply the percent to the base and get the amount. Okay, so these are the hardest where you're trying to find the percent because you're given both the base and the amount, but you've really got to understand the difference between them. Okay, so let's fill in our formula. We know that 9 is, okay, some percentage of 150. So we're going to get 150 times the percent. Okay, now I need to get my P alone. The issue is P has been multiplied by 150. We can undo multiplication of 150 with division. But if I divide on one side, I have to divide on the other. 150 divided by 150 just equals 1. And then 1 times P just equals P. So what we have here is P equals 9 divided by 150. And again, if we scroll up for just a second here, when we're looking for our percent, we divide the amount by the base, okay? So when we scroll back down here, let me scroll down just a smidge. We have our amount divided by our base, okay? So let's get the calculator to do the work for us. Remember, the calculator just does the side work. So we have 9 divided by 150, and we get 0.06. So let's think about what this means. Let's go back to the worksheet. All right, so we have that 9 divided by 150 is 0.06. My question to you is this our final answer? And you should from home be saying, no, this is not the final answer because this is the percent in decimal form. We want to represent our percent as the final answer in percent form. So what we do is we move the decimal to the right twice and then tack on a percent symbol. So my final answer would be 6%. Okay? So if I were to rewrite this little statement up at the top, I would say 6% of 150 is 9. Okay? Now you don't have to rewrite those statements. I'm just rewriting it so you can kind of get a better understanding of how these statements work. Our final answer is P equals 6%. Okay, last up for this worksheet, we have 35 is what percent of 25? Well, the what percent tells us really clearly that's our percent and we don't know what it is. Okay? Now, we are also told that 35 is, so we're saying 35 is some percent of 25. So that tells me that this right here is my amount because is, we know, generally means equals. So we're saying 35 equals some percent of 25. So this of 25, that is my base. So I can see from this statement that I'm applying my percent to my base of 25, and the result is going to be 35. Notice, we'll go back to black. Notice the amount is greater than the base, which means the percent is going to be greater than 100. So don't be surprised when we get a percent that's greater than 100 here. Okay, let's fill in our percent equation. So we get 35 equals the base times the percent. And just like in the previous example, we need to undo the multiplication of 25 and P. Our goal is to get P alone. Well, to undo the multiplication, I would divide. And if I divide on one side, I have to do the same thing on the other side. So 25 divided by 25 is just 1. 1 times P is just P. So P equals 35 divided by 25. And remember, if we scroll up just a little bit, we have that to solve for the percent, we divide the amount by the base. Well, we have taken the amount and we have divided by the base. So let's get the calculator to do the side work. So we have 35 divided by 25. So 35 divided by 25 equals 1.4. So let's go back to the worksheet. So we get 1.4. So this is the percent in decimal form. So if I have 1.4, I move the decimal to the right twice, tack on a percent symbol. So I would say P equals 140%. Okay, so that is solving percent problems using the percent equation. All right.